Coming to you live. The baddest radio TV talk show around.
My better, my better, my better, my better, my better, my better. We got everything politics on the street. We got everything media, TV, the street. We got everything politics on the street. My better, my better, my better. Follow my better. Introducing your host and co-host,
Kevin.K Ceva.
Hey, it's Tuesday, June the 2nd, 2020, and I want to thank you all for tuning in. I'm your host, Kevin.
I'm Tomika Ceva.
And you're listening to My Better Half, broadcast live from our home studio.
Unplugged.
And you can follow us
On YouTube and Better Half Kevin.K Ceva. On Facebook.
Hey, everybody knows that we're in a pandemic and schizophrenic period of time. And it seems like everything is changing from hour to hour. So even though there's a civil unrest, there's still a pandemic problem lurking. And so in the coming days, we're going to address our national protest. But in the meanwhile, we wanted to address this still ongoing problem that may eventually eclipse the present problem. So today, our guests that we have firsthand experience on the effect of the coronavirus and how it affects the individuals and the establishment where they work. And so we have two phenomenal guests with us today, and we want to introduce them. The first is Tomika Roger. And Tomika is an RN for 22 years. She was nominated for the 2020 Dallas Magazine for the Nursing Excellence Award.
Woohoo!
And we also have Rodney Singleton, and he's a community chaplain, based community health coordinator, and for Baylor, Scott and White, and he has a Master of Arts and a Master of Divinity in Biblical Studies, and we sure need that.
Woohoo!
So, how you all doing?
Wonderful.
It's great to have you guys. We need this conversation at the time because people have forgotten that there is a pandemic still out there lurking around, and they need to be brought back to reality. That, hey, you still have that coronavirus, COVID-19 still lurking out there. So it is such a pleasure to have you guys with us, and you're taking a little time out of your schedule to be with us, and we appreciate that. We take, nothing for granted.
And we have to go and find and search the city for Dallas finest. We have to have people who have firsthand information so that we can relay that to the community. That's what we're committed to doing right now. So even though there's turmoil everywhere and we have problems stacked on top of problems, we still want to make sure that in this that we keep people informed about their health situation. So, usually when we start our program to kind of get familiar with our guests, we ask you why you are actually in this field. So we're gonna start with Tomika and tell us a little bit about your journey and why you're actually in this field.
Okay, I'm Tomika Rogers, and I've been a nurse for 22 years. The reason why I chose this field is I've always wanted to help people, to help those in need, to be a change, and make sure that I can serve my purpose here in life. And initially, when I went to college, I was planning on being an engineer, and my dad got sick, and I helped and assisted with his care, and that's what drove me to become a nurse.
Did you help him? Was he admitted in a hospital?
Yes, he was admitted in a hospital, and I assisted him with everything that he needed while he was there, and I saw the good care that the nursing staff was giving at the hospital that he was admitted to, and that made me want to become a nurse.
Right. So sometimes those situations are life changing. You know, when somebody else has some sort of, experience or trauma, it changes the life in other people really unexpectedly. So, that's why people need to know that, because you need to be aware of your surroundings, because sometimes when you go into care for one person, it encourages you to go into a field to spread your talents in the area that it may, at the time, it may seem that it's a time of grief. But you
Yes,
take that and you made a positive out of it.
yes, it played an intricate role in me making the decision to become a nurse.
Okay. And we have Rodney. I look at Rodney, except for he has his glare on his glasses, so everything's mirrored. But I can sense that he has a spirit within him that is just committed to helping people, even just talking to him. So Rodney, tell us a little bit about you, about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I have served in a vast and diverse number of roles in the local church, including a senior pastor. 10 years ago, a pastor and mentor of mine, German guy who was also a chaplain in the Air Force and a pastor at the time, his name was Chris Silas. He said, I know something that will help you to become a better pastor. And I said, what is that? He said, you need to take CPE. And I was like, well, what is CPE? He said, it's clinical pastoral education. That's the training that every student chaplain goes through before becoming a professional chaplain. And so he told me that it would change my life and help me to become a better pastor. Now I see why. And I concur. And I've encouraged other pastors to seek similar training. While I enjoyed the preaching and teaching ministry and personal relationships, I am incredibly in debt to the training as a chaplain that helps me to be able to enhance or improve the quality of lives of people who are hurting and going through some very difficult time during illnesses or suffering through various diseases.
Right.
So, Rodney, since you're still on here, why don't you tell us, during this pandemic, what has your week looked like?
I'm glad you asked that. So as a community chaplain, I serve in a really unique role. So I have about 35 churches that I partner with, and I oversee this relationship. It's called the Ministerial Advisory Board members. And they buy into our vision for better health and wellness. Baylor is on the cutting edge of providing quality care for our patients. No longer are we trying to just treat the illness, but we're into preventive care. So one of my roles outside of the hospital setting is I'm training faith volunteers in the community to go and do some of the work that I do. So they help out in providing food and other resources to help enhance the quality of life in our patients. And we know that when we pair patients with these trained, certified volunteers, it definitely improves their quality of life. We know that as a result of that, they're going to make their appointments. They're more apt to be diligent about what they're eating. And then we help prepare them for their next doctor's visits. One of the most critical things that's necessary for our medical providers and other medical experts is information. So we help prepare our patient for that next visit and provide them with the resources that they need to have a quality visit when they visit their doctors.
Okay. Tomika, when this pandemic hit, I guess it's around maybe February or March, when you started to see it escalate, take us into the hospital. What was the scene there when they started to grow and then people started to become overwhelmed with patients with COVID-19?
Well, the scene was very chaotic initially. the pandemic hit so fast that we had to come together and make sure that we had all the resources needed to care for our patients, to prepare if we had an overabundance of admissions. And so initially, I would say that one of the issues that we had was we had a shortage of supplies. We had to ensure that all of the nursing staff was educated on caring for these patients. And I would say it hit so hard that, people were just scared. They were stressed out. But I feel that it actually brought us together. It brought a sense of community, because we all had to work together to ensure that the virus was controlled. So, I think overall it ended up having a very positive outcome. We got a lot of community support. We had donations from restaurants. They brought lunch to the nurses caring for these patients. We had donations of supplies because we had shortages of masks and gloves. And so I think overall we worked together to fight this virus, and it ended up being a very positive outcome. Although initially it was very stressful, we were able to work together to ensure that the patients were definitely taken care of.
And that's why we invited you all in this kind of combination, because there was an illness there, but there was also a stress factor that played on the nurses. And I know Rodney's he's in the business of, health, wellness, and spiritual uplifting. But we will see on CNN that nurses they were total out. When they were leaving the job, they were breaking down. And you get used to in a hospital, maybe, one or two people passing away. But when you go into a facility and everybody has a sickness and 30% of them are not going to make it that day, it's almost like you're walking into a morgue instead of a hospital. A place is going to make people well, but it's just a death waiting room.
Yes.
So how do you, Rodney, how do you go into a place that's almost like a death waiting room and then administer hope to people?
Well, right now, what we're doing, we're not visiting. We don't have the physical contact with the patients, but we are communicating via phone.
Right.
Even in a situation like that, the best that we can do in any case where there's trauma, there's anxiety, there's a lot of stress, right? There's confusion. I've learned as a chaplain how to listen. As a pastor, we do much of the talking. As a chaplain, I've had to learn to listen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole different skill set. And I've learned that I don't have to have all the answers. Sometimes people just want you to hear, to listen to them.
Right.
And so I've just learned to sit and listen to their concerns, to identify with them. Sometimes you cry with them, right? Even on the phone from a distance. And so I demonstrate and try to bring to reality that they have value. I affirm the fact that they're human and they still have dignity. And I'm concerned for them. And I do the same with their families.
Right.
Do you think that some of our frustration now is because we can't touch one another? And I know that you can touch people in different ways, because you can touch people just with the eyes. I see a lot of times on the news where people had masks on and they want them to pull that mask down so they can see their face. And so touching somebody in words, touching somebody just listening, but at the same time, we're not able now to embrace a lot or shake hands or to comfort. We have to do it with our other senses.
Right, Kevin, that has brought a lot of confusion, especially not just inside the hospital setting, but in the church community. So we find ourselves having to adjust to changes and to learn new skills and to do things differently. And so to that end, I think there's a benefit in there. The church, for the longest, have excluded a lot of people in our community. And so this new experience have caused us to be innovative in a way that we're using social media in a way that we never have before. You know, we're preaching sermons on Facebook Live. So we're doing things differently. So anytime you're involved with change, it's awkward and there's some resistance. I've had many of my pastors who would early on would question the legitimacy or whether or not this virus was really real. Some in the faith community assumed that because you were a Christian, you were somehow immune. And this was frustrating for me. It caused a lot of anxiety for myself. So we find ourselves learning a new skill in learning how to adjust and make changes. And the church should master this.
Right.
So Tomika,
Yes.
do you get attached to any of your patients? Have you gotten attached to the patients? Because you work at the VA, right?
Yes.
Okay. So have you gotten attached to any of the patients since, wait a minute. Do you guys have a lot of homeless people that come into the facility?
Yes. We have a large homeless population.
Have a lot of them been coming in since the COVID?
And yes, well, we have homeless patients that come in all the time. And one thing that I can say is one of the most unnerving things about the coronavirus is the fact that when patients are admitted, it leaves you alone. Can't allow the family members to visit. Contact is limited. So it leaves the patient alone. So it's my job, it's all the nurses' job to make sure that there's a constant communication with the family to make them feel secure, to let them know that their family member is okay, to let them know the status of their family member. And so I think that's one of the big stressors about the COVID is, patients have this sense of being alone. But what we've done is we've come up with a lot of things to ensure that communication is kept between the family members and the patient. We sometimes allow FaceTime. We may go to the patient's room, put the phone to their ear. And so that always helps, just to reassure the patient, reassure the family that their loved one is okay.
Because you go in there and you become a surrogate. People think sometimes you do things that are really not in your pay grade. You become a surrogate. You have to be a mediator in between. And I think probably the most traumatic thing is to see somebody say, see you tomorrow. And then you walk in the next day and they have already, passed. It's almost a shocking thing. And then you got to force yourself to go on again to the next patient. You don't give yourself time to grieve.
And the bad thing about it is these patients ultimately, if they don't do well, they and they, God forbid, pass, they have to die alone. They can't die with their loved ones at their bedside.
So Rodney, Rodney, do you do what is called follow-up?
Oh, most definitely.
It's almost like, when they talk about the president, when somebody dies, like George Floyd, you got to call the family, and they were talking about the phone call. The guy said, man, the phone call wasn't even personal. So it's not a natural thing. I know, you don't really want to do it, even the days where you have somebody that passed away in your family, you have to do this. How do you gain the strength to console somebody, even at times when you need it?
That was a really good question. I want to be honest with you, and I want to be as transparent as I can. I've never considered myself a professional in that area. You never get used to that. Um, every situation and every experience is different. You know, just as sure as you are presumptive in thinking that you've mastered doing that,
Right.
you're thrown a loop. There's a new situation, and so it's always heartbreaking. It's always devastating.
Mhm. Okay, well,
and
without giving names, because I know it happened. Because anytime that you're in some sort of faith leadership, it happens. It's not giving respect to one person or the other, but name a time where, in that instance, you had to do it, and when you got off the phone, you lost it.
Wow. You know, I think what happens is I can't name a specific time, but what happens is after a cumulative of times, that's when you break down. That's
Right.
when it gets worrisome. You get tired. It gets draining.
Right.
But we use precautionary measurements for this, and there's protocol. And so what we do is we treat our peers, our chaplain, as if they're patients. So we're really good about following up, debriefing, and allowing the chaplain to tell his or her story. That's really important. So
Right.
there's times where I'll have to sit down and I'm asking one of my colleagues to listen to me. Hey, I got something really heavy on my heart that I want to share with you. This is really difficult for me. Or otherwise, you will come home and all of that anxiety and that stress is realized and become evident at home.
So Tamika, you said that in your bio that you have practiced in the operating room and you've done mental health as well. But you
Yes.
say quality improvement is near and dear to your heart. Why is that so?
Well, it's near and dear to my heart because in that role, I'm able to ensure that the patient is safe. I'm able to make a change as far as the type of care that they're receiving, the quality of the care. I'm able to educate nurses. And I think that role allows me to just look at the overall picture and address
In
all factors. Yes.
in that area code where you are, zip code where you are, is there a high amount of COVID present within that community on that side of town? Because I know that's a kind of like predominantly African American on that side. So do you see a high risk of COVID patients in that zip code?
Yes, actually, this zip code is considered a hot spot. We have an abundance of cases in this particular area. And it's mainly African American in this particular area code.
And see, when you work in that organization, health organization, you can. It's not a thing that you ignore when you start seeing statistics come in. You see it, and so when you start numbering patients or you're going by doors, and then one day you stop, say, wait a minute, hold up, and you go back and you start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they were slow. They were slow to get that information out to the public to say that the numbers were not the same in communities. That was a disproportionate number.
Yeah.
And so, we didn't get that news, and if we don't get it first, we get it late. And then our late is always too late. So that's why we have to have, this kind of broadcast, because they'll say it on some of these channels in the morning, they'll say it for 10 minutes or 5 minutes, and they don't actually get the truth behind the walls. We see what's coming out, but we don't see what's going in.
So do you think, Tomika, that you guys can, how much testing are you guys getting done? Are you getting enough testing products over there to do the testing now?
Well, I would say at the facility that I work at, yes. The majority of patients that come in are actually tested. I work at the VA, and we're doing all we can to take care of the veterans. However, I would say that the reason why I feel that the cases in my particular area code, or I'm sorry, zip code, are so high is because of the social determinants, those medical variables that affect, I would say, 80% of health outcomes, such as lack of access to healthy foods. We have the Walmarts here, we have the grocery stores that, don't always carry the healthiest food. We have a lot of African Americans who are in essential worker roles, such as the hospital, food services, warehouse workers. And we also have a disproportionate amount of African Americans, in our representing that are in our jail system. And so all of those factors are contributing to the high numbers of our ethnic group.
Absolutely.
Well, we're gonna take a break right quick, and when we come back, I want to talk about the effects of what's going on in the protests and the risk factor for whenever it subsides. Have we made a surge in the coronavirus, and then what do we see, in the next phase? So we're gonna take a break for about a minute. We'll be right back.
Well, 3 minutes. We had 2 commercials.
Ooh, ice cold. Freeze pop.
Are you looking to lose weight, detox your body, build your immune system, and boost your metabolism? Or do you lack energy throughout the day? Maybe you need more focus and mental clarity. Or maybe you're just looking to find ways to combat against health issues such as anxiety, headaches, muscle and nerve pain. Well, TLC is the place to be. And if none of those pertain to you, I'm here to tell you that everyone should be detoxing, no matter who you are. I'm Eudora Barnes, a personal distributor with Total Life Changes, and our products are just that, life-changing. Contact me today and let's discuss the various products containing hemp extract that are available in assisting with becoming a healthier you. The number is 469-783-4046. You can also email me your questions to eudorabarnes@yahoo.com or follow me on Instagram @heiressofgod, and that is HEIRESS_of_God. Talk to you soon.
pandemic. We're in an economic pandemic. And we're in a racial pandemic. And I feel that, it's good that we are having the protests. However, you see hundreds of people in close proximity of one another. And I'm very afraid that, we're going to have an increase of cases just because of that. And so I think that's something that we all need to keep in mind, that this invisible virus is still here. And I think we all need to work together, hold each other accountable for ensuring that, we continue to implement all the measures that we can to ensure that this virus doesn't continue to spread. But, I just feel like with the large groups, the gatherings, people in close proximity of one another, I think we're going to end up with a negative effect because of that.
Rodney, what do you think on your part?
Well, there's a lot of mixed emotions on my end. But one of the things I think we ought to observe is the fact that we also have the faith community. There are a lot of churches that have been involved with peaceful protesting. So in light of that, many of our leaders and community advocates have truly considered the severity of this and the nature of this virus, and they know the threats and what's at stake. So in light of that, that tells me just how important this protest is. And there never seemed to be the right time in history to protest, no matter what we're talking about. So I got a lot of mixed emotions about it. At one end, I know that we're putting lives in jeopardy and people are being exposed and at risk. And on another extreme end, we got some really important issues to deal with, and they simply can't wait.
Right.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. So Tomika, what about the mask? Is that a myth that the mask can protect them from what do you call it? Getting the COVID?
Well, I think everyone needs to understand the purpose of the mask. The purpose of the mask is to protect others from you. So if you are carrying the virus, you won't transmit it to someone. So that's the purpose of the virus. That's the purpose of the mask. The mask is not protecting you. It's protecting others from now. Unless you have a medical grade N95 mask, you're not protected against the virus by wearing the mask. Okay, but wearing the mask lessens the effect if you are carrying the virus and say you sneeze or you cough, the droplets are not gonna spread everywhere because you have the mask on. So that's the purpose of the mask.
Oh.
I took a test the other day because I work through a nursing home, and I took a test the other day, and I know, but I don't know. So when they called and gave me the results, I'm looking like, I'm waiting for them to say, negative. So it was negative, but I have this phobia now that when I'm going out, even if I have a mask on, that I'm not worried about necessarily the virus. I'm worried about how other people handle it. Because if we're going to have social distancing, but everybody's not, abiding by that rule, mask or not, then I see myself walking around different aisles, and I'm just conscious about it. So when they talk about the economy is shut down, the economy not shut down, I'm shut down. So I'm leery about going to restaurants because I don't know if the guy at the next table believes it's a hoax and he comes in with his mask and he doesn't care. So that's the problem that we're having, and I was talking to Rodney about that kind of education. So when you go into the churches and you go into the communities, are you trying to bridge that gap, or are you just trying to give everybody ammo? Because just giving everybody ammo, without the intelligence of it, then it doesn't work.
Right. So my job, my role in that area is to provide as much information, facts as possible, and obviously working with Baylor, these are going to be governmental type of guidelines or rules and health information, and so I'm providing the faith community with as much information as possible to protect themselves and others, because what you just described is you and I, we're living in an age where now there's a type of trust system. And since I'm trusting you, then that means that you got to do the right thing, not just for you, but for everybody else.
Right. Right. It's like driving on the highway. Yeah. I'm going to watch out, but I'm expecting that you're going to do the same thing. But if you're driving drunk, I'm fixing to let you go, or I'm going to back up, or I'm getting off the freeway.
And Tomika, I know that you said that you are the director, you're on the board of directors of the National Professional Nursing Organization. By the way, our daughter is an RN as well. She's a traveling nurse. She's up there in Seattle.
Okay.
on the front line. But you're saying that you guys' mission is to empower innovative leaders that would serve and educate vulnerable communities. What communities are you referring to?
Well, this is a national organization that I'm a part of, Black Nurses Rock. And so we have representation all over the United States. I'm on the board of the Dallas chapter. And so our job is to get out and educate the people in our particular community, which is Dallas. Recently, we held a health fair at Dallas West Church of Christ, where we were able to provide education to over 100 people. I would say at least 150 people. And during that health fair, we were able to check, we screened over 100 people for diabetes. We provided education about diet and exercise and various subjects. So Rodney participated in that particular health fair.
I thought that's what you're referring to.
Yes. And so I just believe that as a community, it's up to us and me as a nurse is to ensure that the people that I know, the people at my church, are educated on ways to prevent it. We are right now preparing to reopen, and one of the subjects came up is how do we utilize gloves at our church? That's a question that I had from our minister, Brother Barry, and I told him that I felt that we should educate people on good hand washing, always using sanitizer, because some people are not educated about wearing gloves. They wear gloves, but then they touch various surfaces.
They don't know,
contaminate everything.
They don't know cross-contamination.
That is true. So educate us on those gloves. Educate us on wearing gloves, because we do get it wrong.
Right. And so and this has gone on for years. You go in a restaurant and you see people with the same pair of gloves, wiping their sweat, talking on taking out
going to the restroom. They get up and go to the restroom and come back with the same gloves on.
Right. And people don't understand that you actually have to continue to change gloves for them to be effective and to stay clean. And so I believe that good hand washing is one good way that we're going to fight this. Hand washing, keeping sanitizer available, because people just are not educated on the use of gloves. And then also one thing that I'm seeing is when you go in a restaurant or a public place, you see people with the mask on and they're constantly touching their mask. They're readjusting it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's one way to contaminate your mask. So you're touching the surface and then you're touching this mask and you're putting that on your face.
Yeah. You see, right. You see news anchors doing it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, all the time.
Next time you go in a restaurant, observe the workers. They're gonna
That's what I'm saying. That's the phobia.
Your food.
So are they contaminating our food?
Yeah. Look at that's the phobia, Tomika, because I'm now I'm aware and I'm looking and I'm eating my dinner. Look at her touching her nose. Just something I didn't even think about last year.
Yeah.
But now I'm watching you touch your nose. I'm watching you stay close to somebody. I'm a wreck.
Oh, you got me scared now. I don't know if I ever go out there and eat again.
But you know what I'm saying is when you're working the help,
I observe that. When I observe that, I will leave.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. So when you work in the health field, you see things like that. So Rodney, since you do you work in community faith-based organization, and you talk about health, and you talk about wellness, and you talk about faith. Break those down, because sometimes we think health is wellness, and we think wellness has to do with spirit. Separate those from.
Well, I'm glad you asked, and I'm proud to say that now I think we know better, and it's hard to make the separation, because when we talk about health, right? Years ago, the assumption is that all I'm talking about, right, is just my body, or if I'm talking about spirituality, all I'm talking about is a worship experience. And so one of the things that I share with my pastors, because ministry is so enduring, right? And it's so taxing, right? Now we know in order to do God's will successfully, in order to do the work of the church and whatever other ministry that you're involved in, we now realize and know better that the work is rigorous, it's tough, it's enduring. And so in order to pastor successfully in the long haul, we got to take care of our health. So I don't separate the two. I understand that when we talk about the body and the spirit, we're talking about one.
Right.
So I'm glad you asked that. So that's the message that I share with my pastors as I encourage them to share and embrace in our partnership and our relationship and embrace health and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing,
the whole being.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you said that, because we talk about the coronavirus, a lot of people, because they're quarantined, now they're talking about the mental repercussions of this. Because some people are losing their minds being quarantined. You're starting to have abuse, or you have depression, emotional anxiety. So how do we combat that?
Yeah, so on one end, there's a level of help and encouragement I can provide, but I'm also mindful that there are some more intense cases and severities where I need to be responsible in getting a social worker involved, and perhaps the social worker will get a psychologist involved, and we'll get a community of medical experts involved so that we can provide the quality of health that patient needs. Again, we now know that we have to be careful, or at least cautious, about stigmatizing various types of illnesses, or especially in the case of mental health.
Right.
So I provide a certain amount of spiritual nourishment, spiritual health that's possible. But as a
without
chaplain,
diagnosing the
and
problem.
I
Right.
know as a pastor, there's only so much that I can do. I'm not a trained psychologist.
Right.
And that's what I was going to ask Tomika. How's your organization, the VA, combating the mental health of those homeless vets that's coming in to the building, dealing with COVID outside? How do you guys do that? How are you doing that?
Well, we have a ton of resources available for homeless veterans. We have programs to help them psychologically.
Mm-hmm.
We have a program that they have to go through, and we have so many resources available for veterans coping with this, coping with being homeless. And one thing I want to say is the VA offers a lot of resources for staff as well. There's a lot of employee support programs for staff available. So,
Okay, that's good.
Really good job. Yes.
One thing that I'm not looking forward to, but I'm looking forward, is that around September, I don't know, I'm from Houston. So when I come down here, now, what are you on it for? I say Houston.
No.
So I come down here, and every September and every October, I have allergies. I wake up, my eyes are, almost dilated. They're just red for about 2 months. And I got to sneeze 40 times before I get ready to go to work. So how do you think, Tomika, how do you think we're going to interact when allergy season and flu seasons and if coronavirus is here at the same time?
Well, I would say one positive thing is we have these protective mechanisms in place. That's one reason why we need to continue to wear the mask, because that's going to lower the probability of transmission of the disease. And, another thing that I learned just through some research is that this COVID disease is mutating. The more that it mutates, it's getting stronger.
Wow.
And it's
because one of the things
forms. In China, I was going to say, in China, most of the patients that got really sick were over 65. Here in the United States, we have people all ages with no comorbidities that are getting sick. We have people 20, 30, 40, 50 that are getting really sick. So, and the reason for that is because the disease is mutating.
Right, because what I'm saying is it's going to compound, because during that time you have cough and you have runny nose.
Mm-hmm.
So when you got a mask on and you're doing that season where it's allergies, you got a runny nose. You got a whole nother problem. Now you're gonna have to change masks.
That's true. That's true. I mean, because I have sneezed in a mask before, and it's pretty bad. So,
and some of those masks are pretty bad without sneezing in them.
Yeah, we call coronavirus out of season. Out of season, and then we're going into this season where we think it's gonna be gone because it's hot, and everybody's out. It's a sunny day. But then when that comes, because I believe now, the sense now, because we are protesting in numbers, that looks like a football stadium. And they're gonna say it's okay to have sports now.
But what do you think? Do you think because it's hot, I don't know what to think, because they're hot, it's gonna kill the virus, or it's gonna be still here in the summer?
Well, it's still here. It hasn't went away. I think the cases will be lower, because we tend to have, flus and coronas. Now, this is COVID-19. Keep in mind that corona there's several forms of corona that have been out for years. Okay, this is just a form of. And so, we have our flu seasons, and we're going to have another COVID-19 season. And so, yeah, I believe the weather is, one of the contributing factors of it not being as prevalent. This definitely in the fall and winter, we're going to see in cases again.
So we're gonna take a break, and we're gonna come back in a minute, and we'll do our closing remarks.
We're gonna do a little tribute to you guys on the front line on this commercial. So, and we'll be right back, you guys.
Thanks.
All right.
What the night is gonna bring, he's got the whole world in his hands. Don't worry, be happy now. Don't worry, be happy now. It's gonna be a brighter day, brighter day, brighter day. So smile for me. Can you just smile for me? So smile for me.
From Mark and Sierra Holmes.
Yeah.
They go to church with us, and
Central Point Church of Christ.
And they were at home, doing. A lot of people are coming up with different things, different activities, and they are so talented in their singing. It's nothing like a brother and sister tone.
Yes.
And so they made that up, and I told them I'm going to use that as a tribute to the frontline workers and the nurses who have really sacrificed helping us through this pandemic. And so just kudos to them. They're kind of like my kids now. So Tomika, before we go, what is it that you scrambled with at the beginning of coronavirus that if it comes back, you see you're better prepared, but what are you not going to scramble with that you scrambled with before?
I would say that I'm not gonna scramble with the lack of action for it. Again, initially there was a shortage of supplies. That was one of the main issues that we had, and I feel like we are getting more educated about this, and we are definitely prepared if we do have another spike in cases. We have our nursing staff, they're educated. I'm getting as much education as I can about this. I'm making sure that I educate my loved ones, my friends, my co-workers. And so I feel like, I'm not going to succumb any problems if we have another spike.
Okay.
I think it's all about working together, holding each other accountable, and staying educated about it.
And what about you, Rodney?
Yeah, so I feel comfortable that we got all the right partners in places, and we got a lot of the churches involved. And so I think it'll be easier to assimilate teams and get food products and all the other health resources that they need in a quicker time.
Did they ever call you to any funerals?
No. Well, I'm sorry. Matter of fact, I have. I did. One. Yeah.
Okay.
One.
Because I know that's probably been the most hurting issue that people have to deal with.
Yeah.
Is because when you have somebody that lived with you, let's say over 60 years, mother, father, whatever, and you can only isolate them and not prepare a going away program or ceremony or funeral for them. It has to be restricted to just a few people, like a viewing, and then they go in a box and that's it.
Yeah.
And I think that really, really emotionally hurt a lot of people because they couldn't say their goodbyes in the way that they wanted to.
Yeah, it helps to have a rapport with the family in a situation like that. And depending on the nature of the relationship, if you have a lot of influence, you might be able to encourage the family in the way that they embrace, again, this unique situation, that this is different because of this situation, you know. So.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, it's been interesting to learn about those gloves, though. Tomika, you just shocked me where I don't think I'm ever going to go out to eat. I'm going to be stuck in the kitchen from now on.
So what did we get out? Should we just not use gloves at all, Tomika?
I don't know. What we going to do, Tomika, about the gloves?
You got to keep an exchange. You got to change your gloves in your pocket.
My recommendation is good hand washing. That's my recommendation. Hand washing, sanitizer.
And not wearing any gloves at all.
Well, you know, if you're going to a place where that's been highly populated, I would say like a grocery store, you know, where 100 people have touched one grocery basket, I would wear gloves in that situation, you know.
Okay.
But I just want people to be educated on the fact that if you wear gloves and you keep touching various surfaces, you have to actually change the gloves. Right. So that's the thing that most people are not educated about. They wear the gloves. They wear the one pair of gloves for 24 hours, and you can't do that. You have to you have to continue to change the gloves to keep them clean.
Right. Right. Because they look at you, have to tell people that's nasty.
Yeah.
It is.
And a lot of them are throwing them away on the ground. So what do they need to do about that? Because that's not good either.
Well, again, you know, we need to hold each other accountable. I mean, you can't teach grown people to cleanliness. You know, people should know that, you know, when you have a dirty glove or dirty mask, you have to discard them properly. We had a problem with that, you know, where I work, we had to make an announcement. Hey, throw the gloves in the trash. Don't just throw them down next to your car when you're ready to go home.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, you know, we all have to hold one another accountable for things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you have, especially in the hospital, you have a sense of having biohazard material around, especially when you're tending to residents, and you're bringing people in for services. You know, the hospital has to have a cleanliness to it because people can come in and contract that in the place where you're supposed to be getting well.
Right. And one thing I want to say before we finish is the majority of cases that we have among employees that work with me, they did not contract it at the hospital that we work at. They contracted it in the community, going to the grocery store, continuously, you know, not practicing social distancing. That's where they contracted the disease. Not, you would think that they contracted it taking care of the patients, but that's not where they contracted it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because you know, even at work, I tell people to be conscious because a lot of times when people take lunch, they go places.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come right back to the workplace again. And, you know, I told them, I say, put everybody on lockdown. Because when they go out, they go to Popeyes, they go here, they go there, they sit down, and then they come back. So you don't know where they've been. And if you're trying to keep it, you're trying to keep a clean building.
Gas, touch the gas pump, and you know.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no sanitation at the door.
But you know, before COVID-19 at the gas pump, I always had a glove then anyway, because you never know who touching those pumps.
Yeah. So you have to be on guard of, those things like that, because we coming into the beginning of the winter allergy season.
Yeah.
And that's all you're gonna see. You're gonna see sneezing everywhere, and
And you know that look they're gonna get when they do that sneeze, right?
that's fine. Hey, we do that in the house.
Yeah.
Somebody sneeze upstairs. Like,
What? What's wrong with you?
Well, that's what
So I can see.
Yeah.
When someone sneezes in the grocery store, people scramble.
Yeah.
We are one of them who do that.
Yeah, they put me outside like I got leprosy when I sneeze. I gotta come back in 10 days.
we told we put them in. Yeah, we put them on quarantine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My allergy
Don't lock me up. What'd you say, Rodney?
No, my allergy is off the chain. And look,
Right.
I almost sneezed moments ago when I was doing this. Please don't say
Yeah.
Well, it has been a pleasure talking to you guys and getting educated and understanding your position as a chaplain, even more so, and then understand, because I know a lot of times people probably think that, all they do is just go in the hospital and just pray over somebody or something like that. But your job is more than just praying over people.
Yeah.
You're their friend, you're their psychiatrist, you're their go-to person that's in between them and their relatives when they pass away and things like that. And you develop a bond sometimes with these people. And we appreciate that, and we appreciate you, Tomika. Your job is always going to be hard because being an RN, and I watch my daughter, and she goes back and forth to hospital and things like that, and sometimes she come and tell us, some little things that was going on, and I'm like, I used to work in the hospital, but that I'm not going to do.
Yeah. And we want to thank you all for being transparent, because that's our show. We want to. We want people to really kind of know exactly what you're going through, because even Jesus was in the earth. He's divine, but he's in the earthly body. He had to take a break, because when you're in the field of service, and then people come to feast your service and want you to help them, sometimes you get overwhelmed and you got to go to the other side of the lake or go up in a mountain or go home, because sometimes it takes a toll on you. You don't have an S on your chest every time you go in there. You have emotions just like everybody else.
And sometimes the people think that because that's your job, that you don't get tired and you can't show your emotions that, somebody just passed away while you was there watching them and trying to take care of them, especially during the COVID-19, a lot of, like you said, a lot of people, parents, relatives couldn't come in with them. So somebody had to be there holding their hands and talking to them and comforting them. And you guys on the front line, and you there putting your life on the line for them as well. So that's why we wanted to do this show, to show that you guys do more than just run around and sit at the desk and things like that. You're actually there, sitting in front of these people, holding their hands, praying with them, and things like that. So we appreciate you guys.
And Rodney, what you're doing, as far as a ministry, because I remember us having a family meeting one time, and we talked about our style of living, and I have brothers, and we talked about, if you're going to live this lifestyle, you live this lifestyle that eventually is going to burden one of us to take care of you. It's negligent. And so that's what you're doing. You're going into the churches that don't live a negligent life and then become sick, and then you burden somebody's life for the next 15 years having to take care of you because you brought some sort of illness on you. Now we can see if it's something that's just happens out of the way, you get cancer or something. But I'm talking about where you live a life and now we got to tend to you. And now you interrupted somebody else's life. And that's what happens a lot of time in our community. Because you don't want to take care of yourself. Now you got diabetes. Now you amputated. Now somebody got to take off work. Somebody got to leave their professional dreams and then come and take care of you, which they're going to do it. But I'm just saying that's negligent.
Yeah.
That's negligent. And so you got to have, that's why I want you to explain health and wellness.
Yeah, that's it.
With that being said, thank you guys so much, and we appreciate you, and hope to talk to you again soon.
All
yeah.
right.
So if you guys have a good night, and join us next week. We're gonna do another show next Tuesday.
Oh yeah, this one here is gonna be a little heavy.
And we're gonna be talking about what's going on out there with the riots, and we're gonna have both race on our show.
Yeah.
So, because we want to hear from both sides. We don't want to be unequal.
Right.
So we want to hear from this side and that side. So join us next week at 7 p.m.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the root of the problem.
Yeah, we're going to get into the root of the problem.
To the root of the problem. And because George Floyd had somebody's, knee on his neck, but there was a reason that knee was there. So we're going to talk about the reason it was there. And so that's something that we don't necessarily address. And we're going to talk about the silence in the church.
Good deal.
Both sides.
See you there.
Okay.
See you guys later. Have a good night.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.
Bye-bye.